Hello and welcome. In this tutorial, we are going to cover question and answer section of generics. Along with covering question and answers, I'm also going to see some of the practical of generics in our Eclipse Studio. So let's begin. The first question is, what is generics in Java and what are advantage of using generics? Well, the question and answer that I have taken this video basically are for the interview purpose, but they are some of our very well defined questions, and I think each and every developer should be aware of the answers of each questions. Well, I would say that those who are coming from prior to Java background knowledge know how inconvenient it was to store object on collection and then cast it back to the correct type before using it. Generics prevent from these. It provides compile time safety and ensures that you only insert correct type in collection and avoids class cast exception in runtime. Okay, so to make your collection type safe, we use generics. Okay, now let's go to our second question. The second question is how generics works in Java and what is type erasure. This is one of a better interview question in generics, and generics is implemented using type erasure. The compiler erases all type related information during compile time and no type related information is available during runtime. For example, list string is represented by only list at runtime. This was done to ensure binary compatibility with the libraries which were developed prior to Java 5. You don't have access to the type argument at runtime and generic type is translated to the raw type by compiler during runtime. You can get a lot of follow-up question based on generic interview question and based upon your response. For example, like why generics is implementing using type erasure, okay, or presenting some invalid generic code and you have to find out why you are getting compile time errors. So you'll have a better understanding of all this question if you are aware how generics work in Java. Is what is bounded and unbounded wildcards in generics. Okay, so this is saying this is another very popular Java interview question and it talks about bounded and unbounded wildcards. So bounded wildcards are those which impose bound on the type. There are two kind of bounded wildcard. One is like question mark extendsT, which impose on the upper bound, ensuring that the type must be subclass of T. And other is question mark superT, where it imposing the lower bound by ensuring the type that you define must be superclass of T. This generic type must be initiated with the type within bound, otherwise it will result into compilation error. On the other hand, question mark represent an unbounded type because it can be replaced with any type. Okay. So for more information, you can just go to this Java Revisited link and you can check out the difference between bounded and unbounded character. What is the difference between list question mark extendsT and list question mark superT? This is related to previous generics interview question and sometime instead of asking what is bounded and unbounded wildcard, the interviewer presents this question by gauge of your understanding of generics. Both of the list declaration is example of bounded wildcard. So you can see list question mark extends T will accept any list with type extending T, while list question mark super T will accept any list with the type superclass of T. For example, list question mark extends number can accept list integer or list float. Okay. So this is the difference between question mark extends and question mark super. Next question is how to write a generic method which accepts generic argument and return generic type. Writing generic method is not difficult. Instead of using raw type, you need to use generic type like T, E or KV. Okay, so you need to actually use a variable which are well-known placeholders for the type, element, key and value. So respectively to define the type, we use T, and for an element we use E, to define a key we use K, and for value we use V. So this is like a simple method which is a put method of hash map. It is taking up key and value, so that's why we are using K and V. And the return type is key. Return type, sorry, is a value, so that's why the return type that is placed over here is a V. Let's go to the next question. The next question says how to write parameterized class in Java using generics. Okay, so this is something we have already studied while running the tutorial. So this is basically a Java generic method question that has came up from the method. So how to write a parameterized class? Well, I would say like it would be more about write a type safe class. So a parameterized class could also be called as a type safe class using generics. And again, the key is instead of using a raw type, you need to use generic type and always use standard placeholder used in JDK like TEKB. Okay. Now, our next question is more about LRU cache using generic. So it's saying write a program to implement LRU cache generic using generics. Well, this is a question which would I think we asked about a really experienced developer. Okay, because it's telling you to write the implementation of a cache. So, well, it's one of a coding exercise if you are interested in running the whole coding exercise. So here is the link. You can go through this link and see the complete code. What is LRU cache? It's where one needs to remove the eldest entry when the cache is full. Okay, and linked hash map provides a method called remove eldest entry, which is called by put and put all and can be used to instruct to remove the oldest entry. You are free to come up with your own implementation also. The question number 8 says, can you pass this string to a method which accepts list object? This generic interview question in Java may look confusing to anyone who is not familiar with generics, as in the first glance it looks like string is a object. So list can be used where list object is required, but this is not true. This will result in compilation error and it does not make sense if you go one step further because list object can store anything including string, integer, etc. But list string can only store strings. So when I talk about list strings, so we can see the string list, it can only store strings, whereas object can store anything like string or integer. Okay, finally to question number 9. Can we use generics with array? Well, I think this is a question that depends upon what the interviewer want to actually ask you. Well, the answer in a general way would be that array does not support generics. The reason is because whenever you declare a generic or whenever you declare an array, at compile time itself you have to provide which data type the array can have. Now coming to the 10th question, it says how can you suppress check warning in Java? Well, the JavaC compiler for Java 5 generates an unchecked warning if you use combine raw types and generic types. Example, list string raw list equals to new array list. Note, hello.java uses unchecked or unsafe operation which can be suppressed by using @suppress warning unchecked annotation. Okay, so this is how it is used. Okay, now this is an interesting question. It says what is the difference between list object and raw type list? I hope so that all of you are now aware of the answer of this question because on one hand we are using generics and on one hand we are not using generics. Well, the answer says that the main difference between raw type and parameterized type list object is that compiler will not check type safety for the raw type at compile time, but it will do for parameterized type by using object as type. It informs compiler that it can hold any type of object, example string or integer. This Java generic interview question is based on the correct understanding of raw type in generics. Okay, and the second difference between them is that You can pass any parameterized type to raw type, but you cannot pass list string to any method which accepts list object. Okay, so I hope so the difference is quite clear. Okay, next question we have is to state the difference between list with wildcard and list with object. And the answer says that the list with wildcard is a list of unknown type, whereas list of object is essentially the list of any type. That means list of any object. You can assign list of string or list of integer to list of wildcard, but you cannot do same in case of list of object. So when we say list of wildcard and name it as list of any type, okay, and then we are having list of object, you can only define it as new array list object. Similarly, for a string, you can define it as a string. For integer, you can define it as an integer. Now, if you do list of any type equals to list of string, this is legal. Similarly, if you do list of any type to list of integer, this is also legal. But if you do list of object to list of string, this will give you a compiler error because these are inconvertible type. Even if you typecast it, then also it will not allow you. Okay, now we have a question which is asking about the difference between list string and raw type list. So this is a slight different from list object and raw type list, because when we talk about object, then it can have any of a object type, and that object type can include string and integer. But here we are saying it can only be list of string type and a raw list type. Okay. So when we talk about a list of string type, that means it can only store string, nothing else. Okay. That means you cannot store any other object on a list of string, but you can only store string. There is no casting required in case of a parameterized type with generic, but explicit casting will be needed for raw type. Now let's see this line of code. It is having list, and list of raw types equals to new array list, and then we are having list of raw types dot add, and we are actually adding ABC and 123. Okay, the compiler will allow it, although it will throw exception at runtime, but at compile time there won't be a problem because we are using a raw type list. Then we are having, while in order to fetch that, we have to explicitly cast to a string. Okay. And when if we do a wrong cast, like over here, it will give us a last cast exception because integer cannot be casted to a string like that. But if we talk about a list of string, then definitely you can add a string. But if you try to add an integer, it will give you a compiler error, which is compiler error is always better than runtime error, because in compiler error you are given a fair chance to fix it. Okay. And whenever you need to fetch it, you do not need to explicitly do a casting. So that is a major difference between raw type and a list of string type, or even any other object type also. Okay guys, so this was about a Q&A for generics. I hope you have learned, and thank you.